Hello and welcome, everybody. And we're back to blah, 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 blah. Yes.
Yeah. Rocco, today we are discussing a very deep question, man. I mean, I know we're all smiles, but what we're talking about is why the world is such a mess right now, or at least feels like such a mess right now, and why that is actually a prevailing sort of a global sentiment. I think we can say that. I'll give myself permission to say that. I feel that globally, this is a sentiment, consciously or unconsciously, for a lot of people, that the world is feeling like it's a mess right now and things are
Mm.
a lot more unstable. And I mean, like you keep saying, the sky's always been falling, so maybe human beings have always felt it this way also. But something about 2025, something about this moment feels like everything is going for a toss.
Mm. Mm.
Feels like.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is it certainly feels that way. The only question, or a question, not the only question, a question that I sort of sit with is the knowing that for some people, they are not thinking that anything's wrong. They are very busy enjoying some outcome, excited about some form of change that might be very small or particular to their level of interest.
Mm.
In America, the right wing, the Republican Party, their nomination, Trump became president. And in the wake of his second presidency, especially given the way his first one went, a lot of people were horrified that it happened, but a lot of people were celebrating that it happened. Now that's a
True.
50-50 split in some demographics. The question you have to ask yourself is, why are people having two opposite experiences?
That's actually true, man. Yeah.
That's, to me, a far more interesting question, because I'll say something is a mess and someone else will be going, we're just fixing the mess up. This is how you
True.
make an omelet, a delicious omelet with all these broken liberal eggs over here. So we're putting the left back in their place and the right is taking their rightful stance. The question is why two different people are having two utterly different experiences about the same moment. Some people are going to bed at night breathing a sigh of relief for the first time, thinking, thank God, now this problem won't be a problem anymore. And other people are having exactly the opposite experience. And even if the Democrats had won this round, somebody else would be, the roles would just be swapped.
Correct. Very true.
There would be one seat in the theater where it's pain and darkness and frustration, and the other one where you feel like your team is winning. And it's a bit like playing or watching a cricket game or a football game, probably a football game, where of half sides they change sides, so that if there's any advantage that one team has playing into the sun or into the wind or something, it gets reversed. And it's a bit like having to bet and they also swap jumpers or jerseys.
Okay.
That's the experience for the audience, is your team was winning and now your team's losing, or your team was losing and now your team's winning. It's not that they just moved sides, it's that they changed fortunes. We've changed fortunes. The wheels now turn. The question is, how is it that we're playing one human game and yet we see everything and express everything and run everything in these kind of teams, these oppositions, this tension?
And such strongly minded and strongly opinionated groups. I mean,
They think the stakes are high. The stakes are now high, you see. Because now you're playing for keeps. You're playing for the soul of humanity. You're playing for the soul of your kids. You're playing for these desperate human rights. You're playing for the climate. You're playing for the economy. You're playing for your livelihood, for your children's future. That's what people feel that they're playing for.
That's actually true, man. And these stakes, I feel, have also, like I say, the sky has always been falling, but something is different. And even in this regard, the stakes have always been high, have always felt high, but perhaps never this high. And it always keeps feeling as if the stakes are getting higher and higher. And both sides feel this way, right? I mean, I want to decode the moment. Yeah, I want to make sense of it.
Sure. So this is what I think. Hey, the problem that more people of, that pyramid or that cone that I have where it's got that shape
the
of
consciousness
how
pyramid.
Populations are distributed. In that one is just happens to be mapping consciousness and will, but it could be prosperity, it could be opportunity, it could be education. Things will track themselves like that. And what you have now as the sides pull apart and the rich are pinching the shape of that cone so that more resources are theirs, more say-so is theirs. And that all of that tension that causes... So when, let's say, for example, you have all these people at the bottom of the pyramid, and when if you change the shape of that pyramid and you make it all about money, all about wealth, what you actually have is all of the people crammed into the bottom that trying to fight for life, and a very few people occupying the whole top half of the pyramid. So think about what the mechanics and the physics of that would be. So then if you can't break a certain ceiling, you start fighting much more intensely with things that you think are keeping you in that place. And the living room and the breathing space that you've got left and right by your neighbors and so what we've done with social media and streaming services and internet everything, and an account for the toaster that connects with your email, and then have to sign up for this and scan a QR code, and everything has become an app that they're trying to rent your life back to you, through a subscription. And so if you imagine that ceiling, that living space, that space to reach and to climb, it was a shorter hop between where you were and where you wanted to be. And there was more runway to do that in. Now it's squashed right down to the bottom half of the pyramid. And then there's this massive gap to get out of there. You can't even earn enough in a lifetime to pay for your house or to pay your education off. So we used to do things where we built this long, thin bridge that we could give to our children that they could have a chance at a better life. There's nothing you can do now that will give them that better chance. So, in countries where there's a big third world, first world split, like India and like South Africa, it feels different. But in countries that are mostly first world with a bit of like ghetto kind of first world pockets, but the majority is still wealthy and affluent.
I see.
Their level of expectation versus like how they want to be the same as their neighbors, or have the same as their neighbors, or have the same as the next guy. That gulf is just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And all of our institutions have not prepared us to argue, defy, challenge, because all of the cards are on the employer's table, the corporate's table, the government's table, and influencers' table, in all the ways that we now broker influence, power, etc. The average person is disenfranchised. If it's on social media, you have to bow to the rules of Facebook and Meta for community safety. They tell you what to watch. They tell you who you see. They tell you what, if you're allowed on the platform, what you're allowed to say. You go to work, you get told how to dress, when to come in, what you can and can't eat, how you can speak, what you can call yourself, what time you can go home. So everyone's in control of your life except you. And then they tell you in every way that the person who's making your life hard is somebody from another team. Find a team. If you're not on the right team, then you're not doing anything about the problem. But the other team's not the problem, because they've got sufferers the same as you. They've got children the same as you. They've just got told a different version of what the problem is. Yeah? Is that making sense?
It is making sense. I mean, there is some difference to my personal experience in India, but perhaps you also touched upon it. Like,
yes.
I mean, the the gulf that you talk about between the well-off and people who cannot be well-off anymore, in some sense, that is actually relatable even in India right now. Like there are
It's
people
harder.
who, it's harder, yes, but then I also feel, Rocco, that even for people who are affluent, it's getting harder for them too. Like I mean, it's getting
Correct.
comfortable in the sense that you have a luxurious life, you can afford all the luxury you want, but then there's the
Yeah.
problem of meaning. It's
Correct.
I feel this way. I mean, the highest paid people even in India right now, and I can say that because I am working in an environment which is close to the highest paying environment in the country, the tech divisions, etc. Almost none of my friends are in a meaningful job right now, and that feels to me like a problem.
Yeah. Almost
Like, I
nobody
mean,
in the world is.
exactly, but they're making
Right.
money. They're making money. They're getting affluent. Like they can
Yes.
afford things. They can afford
Yeah.
all the things they want. I mean, of course, not all,
Yeah.
because there's always an excelsior level above the diamond level, right? But there is, sometimes I feel this is also contributing to a bit of the problem, because we were told when we were growing up that if you have money, it's going to solve your problems, and we have all realized at some point that that is not going to solve your problems. But then what else do you do? Like, Noam Chomsky says, in one of his videos, that
You have the
yeah,
right
you
to
have,
starve.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
can, you have the choice to quit your job, but yeah, it's like you're choosing to starve. You're free to choose to starve.
Yes.
And that's also a problem
So
that's magnifying. Hmm.
right, and even for the people that are affluent, it's not like the thing that they also need money can buy.
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
thing that they
Hmm.
need is pastoral care and fellowship.
Hmm.
Fellowship, just being
Hmm.
part of a community in an integrated way,
Yeah.
where they, enjoy the public works and they enjoy their spaces and they have a shared culture.
Hmm.
Everyone has nucleated cultures that are divided on lines of wealth,
Yeah.
on lines of status, on lines of celebrity, on lines of religion,
Hmm.
sexuality, sexual identity,
Hmm.
politics, ideology, education. We just
Hmm.
divide people up like this and we
Yeah.
label ourselves in different ways.
Hmm.
And we don't make much room for our sameness. We don't even acknowledge the relevance of our sameness.
That is 100% true, man.
And
It's
so
hmm.
we're living in smaller and smaller cubicles of life,
Hmm.
really.
Yeah. Yeah.
The dimensions of which, the lighting of which, the soundtrack of which is all determined by AI, by algorithms,
By algorithms.
by
Yeah.
tech platforms, which simply don't understand meaning of the word enough. There's no comprehension of that word.
Yeah.
And eventually, when you fill out a closed system, like a baby that grows to the fullness of the womb,
Hmm. Hmm.
if there's two twins growing in the womb and there's not enough room or not enough nutrition, the one will be digested by the other. As horrifying as that sounds, when a village fills out the valley and they'll eat all the resources, they'll drink all the water, they'll foul all the water. They have to split or they have to adapt and evolve. But we are not taking the cue that we've filled up the valley and filled out the whole ecosphere. We are just trying to squeeze eternal growth out
Yeah.
of a closed system. And
Yeah.
so what happens is we start predating on ourselves and predating on our environment.
Hmm.
That is, cancer does that.
Hmm.
Viruses do that. Yeah, things that are outside of the plan of life do that. And so things are a mess out of necessity because life can't sustain irresponsible empowerment. You can't have all of this capability to change your lives and and the world around you, your environment, and change it for all the other citizens of life that you share the road with, if you don't have the wisdom on how to use all of your empowerment in a way that does the whole party for everyone. And we're feeling the experience of that in a dozen ways. And what I was trying to say earlier on is, if you look at that triangle, all that's happening in some instances is that boundary, that barrier is just dropping down. and the amount of people that can occupy freedom and liberty and ability to actually actualize or do what they want, is that gulf is deepening, either through money or through means or through meaning. Means isn't just our money, it's also how do you bring culture and connection to somebody who doesn't know to value it? Who gets fed all their entertainment and can't tell the difference between enrichment, nourishment for the soul, and just entertainment.
And there's so less of, there's such dearth of the latter, right? Such dearth of nourishment online, and such abundance of just absolute crap, garbage. And it always keeps getting increasing. That's also one of the things, Rocco.
Because we've normalized these economies, and every time you normalize an economy, you normalize the actors and the players in that economy. So if somebody's feeling a lack of meaning, they go and take their cue from how to find meaning from other influences in the economy, and then they try to be like them, and they think that will give them meaning. So people are looking for meaning by listening to podcasts about people who don't understand meaning, talking about how to make meaning. And then if you think, well, that guy's got the life, he's a podcaster, he's an influencer, he's got millions. You do whatever matches either the way you can sell your soul or the way you can bastardize your own talents or somebody else's and make money from it through funnels or through gaming, social media algorithms, or
sensational
it's
content.
A race to the bottom. It's a race to the bottom.
And that's also one more thing, Rocco. Like I keep saying, something about this 2025 feels different because we've always had the internet. We've always had tons of influencers and tons of podcasts, and they used to be good. We're not saying podcasts are bad. But what has happened is, it's like let's talk about any single thing, man. I, for one, over the last 2 months wanted to research a lot more about health, how to take care of my health and nutrition and everything. And oh man, the garbage available online. It's like you have to swim through the dump to actually get to any single small piece of diamond available anywhere. And you realize it's such garbage. Like, why were all of these posing as experts and talking about all of these things?
Oh, because it's an unregulated market where you can say and claim to be whatever you feel like, and you don't even have to be lying. You can just be stupid or ignorant.
As long as you say it with conviction.
Correct. But you get what you incentivize. Now, it's not the people that are doing it. They think, I'm imagining, they think that this is a good thing to be doing with their time.
That's actually true.
And when they don't realize that there's a difference between genuine connection and merit and substance, if you don't know that, if you don't have that discernment or that understanding, you think that what you're doing is what they're doing. People who don't understand the depth of a spiritual teacher or a poet or something like that, they go, I can do that. I can get ChatGPT to do that. And then they go do that because they don't know what they don't know. They don't have it doesn't connect with them. So they don't understand what they're robbing anybody of by giving the cheap version of.
And Rocco, that's so true, man, because it's my personal experience also, because consider one such person, the person that you just described, doesn't really understand, let's say, spirituality, but knows the words or has the words via ChatGPT.
They have a feeling even,
Yeah. They might be true to their heart, but it's almost like they do not have the level of understanding, or they could have been better. I'll just caveat at that.
Well, it's like a child in a gourmet restaurant that's making mud pies or something, or just something barely like 2-minute noodles or something. They think that they can't tell a good wine from a bad, or a good steak from a bad, or a good curry from a bad. They just, hamburger. I can make hamburgers. And they like McDonald's. They don't understand why I'm not a fool. You're not going to catch me spending $36 for a gourmet hamburger. McDonald's make fine hamburgers. I can make fine hamburgers. They just don't understand what it is that the person who wants something more is after.
Yeah.
They don't have the discernment. Yes.
And they're occupying all the space right now. I mean, it's like...
Yes, that's
almost...
what... you know what a cuckoo bird does?
Yeah.
Yes,
but
we've been over this.
Yeah.
The cuckoo bird lays its egg in another bird's nest, and when the mother is away, then it hatches before the other birds, and it kicks the other birds out.
Yeah.
But the cuckoo bird is not being an arsehole. The baby, the chick, man, that thing just came into the world. It's in a nest and it's just screaming for food, and it'll work the mother to death, but it's not an evil creature. It doesn't actually understand that in its first blind arrival, it had the muscle memory just to kick other people out of the nest, take all of the food for itself. And some signal inside that cuckoo bird is telling it, you are thriving, you are crushing it at life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then it grows up and goes and does the same thing, because that's what it does. That's where we are. It's just an unconscious participation in an economy that is making everybody sick.
That is so true, man. And I think that is what you're pointing to, is that there is a part of our psyche which is exactly like that, which exactly behaves like that, right?
Yes, we all have that shadow in us.
Yeah.
And all it is a will to receive, like a want for me, a desire for me to have, which without which you would die. So you need it. But you can't be a human, which is almost like if life was a computer game, humans would be at like super god level by now. You can change, you can influence the weather and the climate, you can kill species, you can, if this was a computer game, you'd be like entering God mode, right? Getting close. Not full on, but not nothing. You know, what a human being can do today was unthinkable 100 years ago. Unthinkable. The amount of energy we can process, the magic we can do on our phones. We would be superhumans just through our augmentation and through what we've normalized in our technology and our medicine. So now what you're doing is you're taking these godlings, but without the commensurate wisdom or the maturity. So maturity is the word. Maturity says I can grow old and pass on the thread of life through how I show up and live in this world. That's what a tree does. That's what an animal does. That's what a landscape does. But human beings, we stopped caring about what maturity is and what it does and what it means. Because we don't understand initiation. There's no lesson from anybody that you'd care to learn anything from that says to you, never mind me and what I say, just remember you're part of something. We're all part of something here. And this thing only carries on if we kind of all care about making it enough for the party to carry on. Because even if you take something like Buddhism, you know, we love to put Buddhism on a beautiful raised platform because it's such an excellent like patch or instance that we created, you know, and God, we would never want to lose that. But really, if we're honest with ourselves, if we're really just honest with ourselves, the Buddhism is a human project designed to end the human project.
By surrender.
Liberation from the wheel of birth and death. When the liberation from the wheel of birth and death happens for everyone, there is no wheel of birth and death. There is no humanity. That's not to say Buddhism is evil or short-sighted. It means it can't be the whole of the answer. That was how we got to this line. We have to keep its wisdom with us, but we have to be asking a different kind of question. And that question has got a lot more to do with maturity than it has to do with spirituality. It's just, what is pragmatic? What is necessary? What do we need to do? What does it look like to survive this moment into the next? What kind of life would we want to belong to? You know, in olden days when villagers were going through a fast or through a famine or through a natural disaster or a war, all the rules have to go out the window in the face of necessity. The wisdom of doing that is called maturity. That's all it is. It's got nothing to do with how much Valmiki you read or how much of the Upanishads you've memorized, how much you've practiced your Advaita Vedanta, who the I am is. It's got to do with any of that. It's got to do with the bare bones, awkward simplicity of making tough choices in the moment that keep you alive to tomorrow, so you can argue about the fine points then. When men sit and argued in the olden days, women didn't argue. And if they did, they were fools, because they would come out and say, it doesn't matter which of you two win this. We still have to feed the children. We still have to get through the storm. We still have to make through this winter. And women, in that traditional sense, used to have a kind of wisdom that was called necessity. That's the heart of maturity. If there's no mothers and there's no daughters and there's no wives, there's no human being. And if there's no sons and no fathers and no brothers, there's no human being. If people are not making meaning from life, what's the point of it? We're going to wither and die. We're a meaning-making solution that the universe has propagated. We didn't create human beings, but we're creating the reality that we're waking up to. And we created the reality that we've woken up to now. And the one big thing that it's missing is maturity.
And Rocco, I want you to, segue into something first, and then we'll come back to maturity, because I don't know if everyone listening is relating to the experience that we're having of saying that life feels like a mess right now. So let's say someone is listening to this right now and wants to ask you, I don't relate to this. I don't think life is a mess right now.
Okay.
Why do you keep saying that? Why do you keep saying that as if it's an objective truth?
Pay no attention. It's like being in the side of the theater where you can't see or smell the fire, and there's a fire alarm going off, and you say, what's the problem? I'm not getting hot. Okay, I suggest you walk calmly outside by a safe exit, but if you really want to run your own software, the light will keep blinking and show you the way out, even when you start noticing the smoke and the fire. You do you. This is a public service. This is not I'm not telling you what to think. I'm mildly interested in why you might think something else, because I'd want to understand how you are doing the mental and psychological gymnastics or calculus to make sense of what's going on in the world. Because maybe I can learn something. But once I understand what you have to say, I will then realize that there will be a lot of people that might share your view, and I will rephrase what I'm saying so that I don't have to say things twice, so that I'm saying it in a clever, simple enough way so that you can qualify yourself in or out, but make it very, very clear that this is more like a lighthouse with a light on it that warns people from hitting the rocks than it is me walking around telling a story of rocks. Yes.
Okay.
When people are on the sea and it's at night, they can't see where the island is, so they built a lighthouse, and somebody's job is to make the light keep turning around so that even in really bad storms, that there's a piece of land there that someone's warning you about, right? Yeah. And sometimes there was even like an understanding from the navigators that certain kind of lighthouses, they kind of knew where they were, or they knew how they operated, so that you could tell sometimes, even if it isn't the island you're going to hit, the ground is shallow underneath and you can tear your boat. They would know things like that, right? Now, there's this funny story of this US aircraft carrier in the heyday of America's military supremacy of the oceans. And the American captain gets on, and he's a high-ranking captain, and he basically says, unidentified vessel, this is the USS, let's call it the Nimitz, some fancy name, some impressive name. We have you in the middle of our bearing. We advise you to change course. I mean, this is the full weight of the American military speaking. We've got he just rattles down their armaments and their size. And in a way, he's being fair and decent, but in a way, he's also, it's a dick measuring contest. Like he's telling you, I know for a fact there's nothing bigger that I'm not aware of on these seas. So my advice to you is move out the way. And then the reply comes back and says, that's okay, but you're going to run aground. We can't adjust our course, but then the diplomacy begins. But eventually, then the captain gets the microphone taken from him, and the admiral steps up and he says, let me just tell you right now, this is Admiral Third Class," and he just rattles off this incredibly impressive title and resume. And then the response comes back and goes, "Totally get you, believe it, but this is not a ship, this is a lighthouse, and you do you, basically." Now, I'm butchering the story, but you get the point. The point is, everyone's walking around with a badge, thinking what they do or don't need to think, or what they do or don't need to believe. You believe you, but let me tell you, what's not moving is the lighthouse, because it's stuck on an island, and the island is called sanity. Now, whether you are worried about that now because your hull's too shallow, or you're too far away, or you're some other thing, you think you're having an adventure, but you're in a safe little harbor somewhere, that can happen. That happens, People live in bubbles, in insulated bubbles of their culture and their community and their own ignorance sometimes. There's various reasons, but, as I said, maybe there's something this person can tell me. Maybe there's a way the lighthouse needs to move or not shine so bright or whatever. But
or Rocco, maybe there could be something that could be an experience that maybe they're not framing properly. Like, could there actually be a question you ask them to sit with? That I understand, I respect that you don't feel the way we're feeling right now, but can you at least relate to this? Or can you at least think about this slightly deeper? Because there are brilliant minds who have, not by their own volition, but they have taken the opposite road. So can there be a question they sit with? It's like,
I don't know. Hey, I'll tell you the way I think about it is, I'm noticing that it's like a wave, a spiral wave. And when I tried to speak about this 5-6 years ago, 1 in 10,000 people would listen. Then it was 5 in 10,000. Then it was none. Then things went rosy in the world for a bit, and everyone thought, but then things got worse, and then suddenly everyone's back on the phone again. And the way that the trouble seems coming for us is, it's coming in waves. Like when you first get the flu, or when you first get diarrhea, or when a storm hits. It never just arrives. It always starts warning you that it's coming. And the first time the diarrhea is coming, you think, I'll be fine, right? I'll just manage it. But eventually it gets so bad that's when reality. Remember, I said to you off air, I said, transformation is engaging with reality at terminal velocity, or hitting reality at terminal velocity and breaking apart on impact. That's captured so nicely by that meme that Mike Tyson said. He said, everyone's got a plan until they get hit in the mouth.
That's actually true, yeah.
Yeah, we all think, if you watch teenagers, the way that they are very, very, very deeply engrossed in their life, you can tell them that they're acting in a way that they're going to regret. They just think you're a fool or you're insane. They've got no context for what you're talking about. That doesn't mean you don't know what you're talking about. You don't understand their lived experience, but you don't not know anything. And yet they can't make any room for the fact that there might be something of relevance outside of their own context. Now, what keeps you awake at night? What do you care about in this world is the question I would ask that person. You will typically find that their concerns will be very
shallow,
very
self-centered, maybe
comparatively shallow, maybe, but definitely a smaller circle of concern. Definitely a smaller circle of concern. And the only invitation in that is to say, just imagine that circle had to double tomorrow, that you had to worry about you and just one other person. And then just keep doubling that circle. And you're going to get to a level where what you think is okay in the world suddenly becomes silly, you suddenly realize there's starving people, there's children, there's animals, there's people in slave trades, there's people are being human trafficked, there's just this, it's not a great current state.
Yeah.
And ask then yourself, what is it that you really want to do with your life or see in the world? And then look at which avenue you think that's going to come, or that will be possible, or if the world is getting better by the month in that paradigm or worse. Now, for some people politically, they believe the world is getting better right now because now suddenly their political team is doing this and they're taking names and breaking eggs and serving up a delicious ideological omelette here. And I don't have anything to say to those people. I've tried, and at the end of the day, you just have to make the beds and the tent and the ration packs ready, because I don't believe that's going to end well.
Yeah.
In
fact, Rocco, what you just said actually inspired something in me. I want to say that because it's also actually inspired by something we talked about earlier off here, which was we can actually ask people if they can at least feel that we are reaching the end of a cliff. It's like the end of an era across so many paradigms.
That's right.
Right?
That's
right. I mean, and that's a lived experience. I think the smallest of circles you have, you will still feel that at some paradigm, because it's the education systems. It's almost as if we feel it's obsolete right now, the way we are educating our kids. The politics systems, I mean, unless you are too polarized, you should feel helpless about the entire game, because it's just one side after the other, one side of blame, one side of fear, one side of suspicion after the other.
More than that, when was the last time you looked forward to going to the movies?
Oh, man.
Okay, that whole experience is just gone. Just gone.
Yeah. Yeah, that hits it. Yeah.
Just when was the last time you went to a wedding where everything was about human connection and not about the photo stream and the Instagram?
Exactly, dude. Right. Wow, man. Yeah.
There's just so many fronts in which we've compromised everything that makes life actually worthwhile.
Yeah. Yes.
And all you're doing is you're giving ground and giving ground and giving ground and giving ground to things that actually, if you were a tree, where the roots of yourself would actually get nourishment and vitality from, you're giving all of that up.
Yeah.
And if you don't think the world's getting worse, or there's no option for it necessarily getting better under that current confusion, how you can tell that we're not going in a happy place is if you think of all the ways that we help decide what the right thing is to do, or what has meaning, or what has value, which is through business, through politics, through social media, through education, through the justice system. All of these things, not one single one of them is a shining light anymore. Everything is a little bit commercialized, a little bit broken, a little bit less human, less connective. It's not connective tissue that's going to work itself together. It's abrasive tissue that's tearing itself apart. So I don't know what the question is, but
But that's it, Rocco. You've hit it. I mean, I appreciate that, because I think if anyone listening to this right now can actually come back and tell me that they don't relate to this, what you just spoke about, how so many avenues of our lives have completely become inhuman almost. If you don't relate to that, you have to be apathetic, you have to be ignorant to what is happening around you. There are no
Pinker, though, right?
Sorry?
Steven Pinker. You know Steven Pinker?
I think I've heard the name, though.
He wrote that piece. And I think there's a related TED talk about the better angels, the angels of our better natures, and it's about the fact that when people were complaining about politics too much, the things that they were complaining about was actually a confected complaint, because health had increased, affluence had increased, diseases had gone down, crime had gone down. In a lot of the ways that we thought was the end of the world, was just being amplified in social media, and we're making those problems actually worse than what they need to be. So it is a double-edged sword. Technology is helpful. We've normalized very human ways of treating each other. But he wrote that book just before the social justice movements really found their speed. through the left and through cancel culture and through pronouns and that detour we took away from sanity. And, I wonder actually what he would say now, because all of that was true. But by the same token, that was a very rose-colored lens on the present moment prior to all the cynicism that's followed. Every one of those things, the institutions, the cultures that normalized all those positive outcomes, they've all been captured by politics and business since then. So any chance that exactly. That's if you don't call that a mess, like our one shining light has become part of the disease now,
Rocco, so we have talked about the mess. We've talked about even people who are sitting in that corner of the cinema hall right now and are not looking at the fire directly. We've asked them to meditate a little bit more about this part of their life. But now we should talk about maturity, what you were saying. Right?
One more message to them is just, Albert Camus had that thing that said, I would rather live my life as if there is a maker. And then find out afterwards that there wasn't, because I still am happier having made that quality of choice in my life, living that way, than think about this, to act like there wasn't and find out that there is.
There was.
And, what a waste of a life that would have been. So now, would you rather not trying to be part of the solution, be a leader, trying to actualize, trying to create a better world and be part of that collective legacy for humanity? Because when you get to the end of your life, how much of that are you going to have regret about? Whereas if you find out later that you didn't do enough, or you half lived your life, or you kind of coasted or took things for granted, or just complained because you didn't like the way it was turning out, or you think it's fine now, and then 5 years from now you do actually arrive at a problem where you're waking up and going, okay, shit, I care about something now. Wouldn't you have rather spent that interceding 5 years leaving a placeholder for the possibility that this is true? Now you know what to come back to. Or just go, you know what, I'm going to walk this way a little bit and see if my life changes. You lose nothing by living more connected and positive to life. So,
that's it, man. I mean, I know what you talk about and what we talk about here. It's a win-win scenario. It's a win-win scenario. The only parts of us that lose are perhaps the inhuman parts which we are better off getting rid of at the moment, because it's necessary to do so.
Yes. Or taking the reins back from.
Correct.
You could imagine that you are actually two horses, in pulling your chariot forward, and the one horse is the left brain and the other horse is the right brain. And the left brain horse, it's probably quicker, it can run faster, can do all those things, but it doesn't know how to lead. It's not heart-led, whereas the right brain horse is. And so even if you're going a bit slower or there's tougher going or something, there's always more meaning by following. So what you want to do is you want to actually put them in a row, not like this. You want to let both pull forward, but let the front, the right brain lead,
And that's so well summarized in that book, The Master and His Emissary, right? I mean, and he uses the same words. The master has now become the emissary, but it is supposed to be the master. It's supposed to be the leader. Right.
Just to show kindness to our listeners, that is an incredibly dense book to read. So even if you find just the preface, just the foreword, there's nothing that he says in the opening of that book, those like 15, 20 pages, that doesn't land the whole argument. All the rest was just notes. Really.
I totally relate to that, man.
So you can actually just read that, but in fact, we might actually do an episode just on that. And you'll get everything you need. And if you just ask ChatGPT, summarize Ian McGilchrist's thesis of the master and his emissary for me and explain it to me like I'm coming from this level. There's nothing, just that opening chapter won't tell you about everything you need to know about that book.
That's actually true, man. I mean, it's my lived experience too for that book, because I read 100 odd pages. I would read 10 odd pages a day, but it's so dense. It's just, it felt almost impossible to get through, because I also felt he was talking about the same thing over and over.
Well,
no disrespect to him. I mean,
sure. When you're completely away from all your peers and you do something everybody tells you not to do, and you spend a decade of your career doing that, and then 20 years doing experiments, and you're going to come out with one book, you don't want anyone to shoot it off the shelves, so you back it up with everything. That's what he did. But
exactly,
he had me at hello. Once I read the beginning, I started paging through the book, and I listened to the podcasts he was on, and I reckon, oh, he's always just churning this.
So, and you're right, dude. The volume of references is put in that book. I think I've never seen a scientific book that well referenced. I mean, I think the last 25% of the book, and it's a massive book. The last 200 pages are, I guess, references from different experiments that he has done. He's citing from different sources.
Correct.
Crazy.
So, I don't want to recommend that as a fun read in the toilet for anyone.
Oh, definitely.
Yes.
Definitely.
But priceless.
Priceless, indeed. Yes. In fact, I remember there's a video I've done on my channel which was actually sourced from your book, dude, The Heart and the Will. And it was centered around why we are losing our soul in the modern society. It's actually pointing directly to this realization itself, that you remember you talk about the soul and the spirit, and how we have the spirit, which is the left brain, let's say, and we are losing the soul, the right brain. And that's it.
I wrote because one of the Jungian archetypes that I work with a lot is Hanuman. But it's not necessarily to really understand it. You have to think of the Ramayana and just the character that he was, and his how devotion was central to his selfhood and his being, and how he was a devotee of Rama. And if you assume that Rama is not a person but a personification of perfection, that's the whole point of the bow and arrow, the ability to shoot. The arrow never reaches its mark, but it's a vector that you're trying to reach. It's the closeness. Every shot is the training shot for the next shot. That's agile, right? And that's why the Ramayana, the little symbol is that bow and arrow. And if you think about Hanuman, this empowered demigod god, it's a reflection of human beings. We are like young demigods. He was so foolish when he began. He saw that the sun in the sky, and he thought it was a mango, and he was so empowered that he could reach like the Greek Icarus for the sun. But unlike the mortal Icarus, whose wings would melt and he would crash, Hanuman was so powerful, he actually would have grabbed the sun and put it out. Indra had to knock him out with a vajra, that lightning bolt, that inspiration, that intervention that life gives us, that says, you are climbing too high, too fast. And the problem is not that you won't do it. The problem is that you will. You are a danger unto yourself and to the world. And so he gets stunned and he lies on the ground. And then the other gods come around and Indra said, mate, that is so-and-so's favorite son. Like, what do you think you've done? Right? I forget whose son it is. Is it Vishnu's son?
Pavan. So that's wind god, the wind god.
Right.
He's called Pavan Putra. So
it's his son. You better sort your shit out. And that's when he becomes a devotee of Shiva indirectly, because he learns to still himself. He learns to focus and harness, practice his discernment, practice his intentionality, practice his presence. And through those acts, it is spoken about in the Ramayana about his devotion to Rama, which is perfection. But if you really think of all the big things that happen, it's not Rama and Lakshman that do it. It's actually him. He's the one that carries the mountain. He's the one that fetches the herb. He's the one that, and he gets his tail set on fire. His lowest chakra, but he runs around and burns the Rakshas's village, And at the end, they give him jewels and pearls, and he bites them. And they go, what are you doing? He says, because if you're telling me these things are valuable, then I want to see. And they go, see what? He said, no, they must have they must have Rama's name in them. And they said, but come on, that's ridiculous. You can't say that that's the only measure of, how do you know that that's what you're looking for? And he said, but if you rip open my flesh, you'll find it written on my bones. That's what I want. I'm devoted to that legacy, that perfection, but not because I ever want to be king, but because I want to be the big brother that everyone wished they had. I want to be the one that steps up into the shoes of the father when the father is not there. I want to be the one that reminds us of our superpower and our sameness and our humanity and our, right? So that's the archetype.
Yeah.
Right. So then I wrote this poem about, after reading McGilchrist's The Master and His Emissary, it says, the monkey. Once upon a time, a monkey who carried the spirit of perfection in its heart spoke into the mute silence of its soul, saying, do not be overwhelmed. Do not be overwhelmed. The part of you that I am speaking to is the other half of your experience that is still asleep. Overwhelm is the language of the precise, lesser half of your full experience. Overwhelm is the language of the precise, lesser half of your full experience that stayed awake when the master was induced to slumber by the cold discomfort and urgency of the world you have helped create. This unworthy steward lives in its own dream, and believes it is the master. This unworthy steward lives in its own dream and believes it is the master. It is not a liar by heart, but it lies easily. Its dishonesty is due to ignorance. And that it is fluent only in languages other than love. The master is the sleeping giant in you, the king, the queen in exile, who is longing to return and whose kingdom is all the poorer for their absence. The emissary has allowed the soul to leave the palace and the magic to leave the kingdom. The emissary is half blind, half deaf, half mute, very clever, and altogether senseless. The monkey's lord, the king, the queen in exile answered with a question, saying, who are you, monkey? Who are you, monkey? To which the monkey replied, when I forget who I am, I follow the way. And when I remember who I am, the way and I are the same. And that is about the invitation that we actually all have to realize that when we are unwell, when we're feeling like the world is overwhelming us, when we have poverty of meaning, it means we're holding the conversation of life too much in this left brain, this reductionist context, this cold interfaces, logic, reason. It's not that we can get by without logic and reason. It's extremely important. What fools would we be, if we didn't have those things? Look at all the greatness that it's given us. But we don't want to be holding the whole conversation of life in that small language, because our language is too small for the territory we have already entered. And language, the limits of my language become the limits of the world that I inhabit. And so suddenly I have all these program coding languages that have coded my understanding and my psychology, written by the left brain, by the cumulative left brain of all human beings. It's an unhappy place. It makes its own matrix. Yeah. I end that piece by saying the ancient Greeks believed that there were two languages with which we might hold the conversation of life. And they used these two languages to describe the world and their place in it and the experiences that this created. They called these languages logos, reason, and mythos, imagination. They lived with the idea that wisdom was the ability to hold the conversation of life and with life in both languages at the same time. They called this being double-minded. And our illness is soullessness. Soul is what is missing when life feels wrong, right? Life feels wrong. That means soul is missing. And no one and everyone is to blame. No one specifically is to blame, but we're all participating in this. And we all are reneging on our sense of empowerment and agency. We could be doing something. The illness is a byproduct of the unconscious, unwise manner in which we have been putting our comforts and the promise of safety in the hands of decision makers who don't have our best interests at heart and never did and never will, cannot. It is the environment and lifestyles we have been creating generation after generation until we arrived here in this moment completely ill with anxiety, disconnection, isolation, and depletion. Our illness caused us to create ever more unwell systems, processes, and ideologies. And these are processes and systems that had some crack cocaine benefits with some long-term compounding side effects. But we became addicted to them, reliant on them, dependent on them. And like any addict to any vice, to any bad habit, to anything that leeches your soul, the dependency squashes out your light, squashes out meaning, squashes out everything that makes life truly worth living. Our illness is defined as our sense of reductionist logic and reason, the mundanity of our own story, how simply we see ourselves and other human beings, how trivially we see ourselves. And it's that sense of triviality that we impose on ourselves and everyone else, inflated to the point that it's drowned out and eclipsed its natural equalizing force, which is our sense of soul, our sense of symbolism, our sense of metaphor, our sense of meaning.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that's why we're in such a... It feels like a mess because it is a mess, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And the latter, the sense of meaning, is actually the mediating cure for the former. I've written somewhere, it's not here, it said, we made of the illness a dungeon. We made a dungeon out of the illness, and with it imprisoned and tortured the cure.
Oh, yes. Yes. That hits home, man. Like literally does. Stepping through, people. Stepping through. There is wisdom stepping through here. Yes. And you can step through the wisdom too.
And what we're doing is we're stepping through the problem. We're just debugging it. And the problem is, if you look at the problem, soul is what's missing when life is wrong. What is soul? Soul is meaning, connection, belonging, vitality, creativity, imagination, and purpose. And each of those have an answer. And the absence of them shows up as depletion, that actually tracks onto the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I can actually tell you how these things map directly onto each of those areas. But fundamentally what we're saying is our choices, or our lack of conscious choice, just our default choice, living life by default, not by design, has us casting votes with every abandoned choice that we don't bother making through our own agency, is a casting vote for a version of a future that we will inhabit that somebody else has designed. If we don't dare to dream, we execute on a coward vision. And those people who are driven to find meaning and through success and money and prosperity and capitalism, they don't realize that they've milked the system dry. And now what they have to milk is the last bit of love and vitality and essence out of that system, which is humanity.
Yeah.
And then we'll all just be like battery chickens, or like cows in a milking farm where you don't get to walk around. You just stand there. They put food in front of you and they come and milk you for your essence. And that's what humans are.
And just so we are very clear, Rocco, does not mean that is literally what will happen going forward, that we'll be sitting...
No, it's virtually what will happen. And it's virtually already happening. We are already there. I'm not warning you about something. It's here, you know. It's here. And all it is it started off small, but it was far enough away not to be your problem. Now it got closer and closer and louder and closer and louder and closer, because you were just not affected by the mill. But eventually the mill went through everybody else. Now it's coming for you, and it'll come for everybody, and it'll come for itself. And it can't help it. Countries are now... They can't make more money out of themselves the traditional way. Now they have to start trying to cut each other up again. That's why we have war at the moment. You know, it's just run away. It's a pathology. It's a pathology.
And Rocco, honestly, I think you have helped me make a lot more sense of the present moment today.
Yeah.
And I have a question for you, man. I mean, and I think anyone who's with us so far at this moment should want to ask the question that you want me to sit with always, is that, how can I help?
Yes.
How can I help?
How can I help, and is my help helping? Because
is my help helping?
Because when we first rush to help, it's a bit like when somebody is caught in a fire or there was a storm. Everybody sends canned food and blankets. and they don't need canned food and blankets. Ironically, what they need is water. We never actually know, and people don't know how to ask. And when somebody's got a loss in the family, we can't sit with our discomfort, so we rush forward and put something clumsy on their altar. Walking mud through their house while we do it. We don't actually understand how to handle vulnerability because we don't make a lot of room for it in ourselves. We don't know how to be vulnerable to each other. So we're more inclined to do clumsy things. And so there's a basic like preparation, initiation, arrival, etiquette. If you want to go visit another country, they tell you what you need to watch out for when you go there because the people there are a little bit different to you and they operate a certain way. It's like that with initiation. It's like that with being part of the solution. You actually have to stop your teenage impulse to want to help and actually find out what it is that you can do, what you care about, who you are as a person. Well, how you can help by starters is just by stop trying to help. Just chill out, get yourself, handle yourself, figure out yourself, bring the temperature down, stop commenting and posting, stop being part of that problem.
That virus,
just by bringing that temperature down or being the one in your group to always say, I think it's an old conversation. I think we can do better. I don't know what the answer is, but this is kind of getting tired for me. I don't like this. This is not bringing us closer together. I don't think it's helpful. And being that way, being that example online, just being another person who's more interested in going, I don't think the world needs to hear what I have to say on this. Really? Pick your battles. Ask whether there should be one. Ask if a battle is the way to solve the problem, Just slowing down and starting to think about that. That's what adults do, And then find a way to participate in initiation, find a way to participate in life in a way that shines a light of potential or hope on something that's bigger than you, and follow your heart because your heart will tell you what you care about. Don't go and do what somebody else tells you is virtuous or meaningful or correct. It has to land with you, You have to imagine that under all of that, whatever you are, whether you're a sailor or a farmer or a writer or whatever you become or feel drawn to, we are all the same thing underneath, which is like a little battery that's made of one side of the one positive pole, one negative pole. One of those is sanity and the other one is meaning. And you've got this little current called choice that you get to spend based on how you navigate sanity and how you make meaning in the world. And your reluctance to spend it this way or to spend it that way or to spend it at all, whilst being in tension with its own willingness to spend it, because we want to all participate in life. That little battery of yours, where you're going to plug your battery in and the kind of amps you're going to pull and the way you're going to add to the charge or make the light or make the wheel turn, whatever it is that you're called to do, you want to make sure that you know how to read the signal coming from that little battery. And that's your truth. That's your you. That's not just it's not just the energy pulse. There is something essential that it is like just to be you. And I promise you that this whole thing, the whole circuit board lights up best when you are in your lane, doing your thing, your way, that lights you up, that makes sense to you, that brings meaning to you. And that's how we make this whole circuit hum. That's how we make the dance. That's how we make the gameplay. Whatever that means to you in your life, begin to figure out what that is. Your relationship and marriage to your own self, your own journey, to the relationships that you have in the world, the containers that you are a part of at work, at home, and then your passions or your curiosities, these things that scratch your itch, that like light you up a little bit, that has nothing to do with only your relationships or your personal development. It's some way that you're trying to excavate your own genius or connect your purpose to the need of the world or something in line of that question.
Oh, yes, man. I mean, what a place it would be to be alive if we were to act like that.
Yeah, and there's nothing stopping us. Just choice.
Just choice.
Just choice.
Yes.
Just choice. And when we say choice, we specifically mean the kind that we are exercising, not one that's being thrust upon us and we're just defaulting into.
Yeah.
Because
actually, Rocco,
yes.
When you were talking about all of that, I was actually thinking to myself, this dude is literally talking about free will right now. This is how you extract however much free will you can have in your life. That's the
only will that is free.
Exactly.
That's the only will that is free when you are completely aware and completely honest about who and what you are and what it is that you truly desire, and everything that you do in the interest of that pursuit and that desire, you can chalk up to free will and meaning. Yeah. Otherwise, it's the expenditure of will, those choices that we make, the choice in surrender based on our sense of sanity and meaning. But all everyone else is doing is running a software program that's keeping us on dim, but sapping all of the vital energy out of us. Now, it can be the other way around, where we're giving actually not having it drained of us, but giving in such a way that lights us up.
Yeah.
Just think about that. And that's a resonance issue. And what it has to be resonant with is like a kind of field of harmony with everybody, but also in harmony with your own true choices, which is, it's kind of like two snakes arriving in the present moment of what the will of the greater system is that you are a part of, and your own part in that, and how you are riding that little tension in the healthiest, most exciting, interesting way. That's what we're supposed to be doing here.
Yeah. Oh, that's it, Rocco. I mean, of course, I think there's a lot more sanity to be pushed out, and we can keep talking about this, but I think this is a brilliant start to what we actually wanted to cover today. Do you think you have anything more to say, Rocco? We started by talking about why the world is such a mess right now.
Sure.
We talked into that space. We also talked into the space of, if you do not feel that the world is feeling like a mess right now, what is it that you can think about, how you can actually be less, let's say, less shallow, perhaps? I don't know if that's the right word right now, but yeah, you get what I'm talking about. And then we also talked about
from that project, the better way to say it. They're just not tied to that project. They're adrift from that project a bit,
Yeah. And then we also talked about how lowering the temperature down right now probably seems like the most sane thing to do. It's like, if you're not helping bringing down the temperature online, offline, wherever you are in your life, you're not contributing to the solution. You are perhaps only contributing to the problem. And I think that's a brilliant way to gauge even a leader, perhaps. So that's what I've started to do. If I'm listening to someone who's talking about anything, if that person is making people more polarized, if that speech is perhaps leading to feeling like an us versus them situation, or a very, very tense situation, that person is not a leader right now. Maybe that person would have been a leader a few years back or something, but right now, in the present moment, it feels like that person should be sort of de-pedestaled from being called a leader.
So the guy I follow, David White, he has something which is, I think, the most subtle and elegant response to that, because everything you're saying is right. But again, even that is you'll see now what I mean. His statement is leadership should be invitational. Think about that. And even your judgment of that is very correct, but it's not invitational. It creates exactly the thing that you are trying to cure. And so the challenge we've got when we are public thinkers is, do you understand? You get it, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So our challenge is how quick we are to say, that guy, if only he wouldn't do this. Here I am doing it.
True.
Let me begin here. There's a story, and I forget where it's from, but it's quite beautiful, and it's from North American indigenous people. And the story is about a grandmother that has a dream, and her dream is that her grandson is going to be a peacemaker. He's going to plant a white pine tree around which a massive covenant of peace is made for all of the peoples. And generations now, when he's an older man and she has long since gone, he fulfills that dream. He unites the nations, the peoples, and he brokers a peace and a togetherness and a sameness out of all of them, and they plant that white tree at a very specific place. And the story is about how there's a spirit of bitterness in the world that comes for him and attacks him in the form of demons. And this one particular demon is a woman with snakes in her hair. That's how it's a visual representation of how bitter and viperous and angry she is. And she kills his wife and children and his family. And even when you think that he is going to exact retribution, he chooses peace again, because his reasoning is the only way to ensure peace is to put the knife down first, is to make the gesture first. Because somebody has to lead that. And so if I don't do it, what's the point of my tree that I'm going to plant? And he reaches his hand out and he combs the snakes out of her hair. And she changes. She changes this, and that's how the peace is made. So much so that it became the inspiration for Benjamin Franklin, which led directly to his participation in the founding of the idea of America and then the founding of America.
Wow, that's powerful, man.
Correct.
Yeah,
and so
I relate.
That is what I mean by invitational leadership, because leadership, we think, is about steering somebody correctly. Sometimes the problem is that person is exactly aroused the way they are because they feel everybody's trying to steer them away from their own true nature. But the animosity cannot be your true nature unless you are not a human, unless you are a Wendigo or a thing or a Rakshasa or something. We have stories for this, right? But you'll remember at the end of the Ramayana, Ravana writes to Rama and he says, I played my part, you played yours. I always knew that you were going to take my life, and that was the way that I could meet you as an equal on this field, because next to you only everyone else is imperfect. So I ran to the other end of the field and I played my heart out there, but I knew that we would meet in the middle. Like, that was always my dharma. And our true natures, what is Ravana without Rama? What is Rama without Ravana? It's just a kind of meaningless question. And the point is invitational leadership. Like, whatever you see is wrong with the world, if you can't frame that as an invitation and a question and a welcome and some form of brokerage all the time, if you're not making a habit of that, then I don't know if that's true leadership. There's
thank you,
better
Rocco.
and worse leadership, but like that to me is that you have to be able to lead strong leaders that are trying to pull the other way. It has to be invitational.
That has to be a word that is inscribed on my bones now. I think I'll have to write it on my board. Invitational leadership. Thank you, man.
Yes, David White.
Really appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you, David White. and thank you for bringing this, Rocco. In fact, I think this is a brilliant note to end this on. If you see what we've talked about here, the world is a mess and all the rest of the jazz that we talked about, but you've ended it with an invitation. An invitation with your own leadership, man. And I really appreciate you for that, and you know that. But an invitation to people, in fact, to actually lead their own lives, lead their own circles, because that is what we need here.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
More people.
Both my two books that you've read, the one ends with a parting gift. And in that parting gift, it has a quote that says, every true gift is an invitation to the deeper gift. And the other book begins with an invitation as well. And I always, the second book actually begins with be invited. Be invited. So everything that I do, you'll notice most of my Substack posts, I say something, but then I always put a proposal or an invitation in there. And that is part of initiation, is if you want to have people going the way, in other words, not Rocco's way, but the one that suits us all best. If that doesn't come in the form of an invitation, it's not the way,
Yeah. Oh, Rocco. This has to be in every single video that I put out now. I mean, it just has to be. And I'm so glad we're ending with this, because this is the invitation here, right? I
Yes.
mean,
So can we
we
let
actually
people know what the invitation is?
go. Yeah.
Okay, so what we've been working on quietly in the background is a project called A Better Way. So I'm formulating a few things. I'm formulating a thing called a universal theory of everything, which takes this whole project of meaning we're talking about and explains it and completely reconciles it with what we are missing about what will bring together things like religion, things like science, things like quantum science under one roof without taking anything away from the things that matter inside of each of those places, but also expanding the way that they can now reach deeper into the mystery of the world and start making sense in a way that can now begin to cohere, not keep pulling further and further apart. And it's big, it's complicated, it's beautiful. And my job at the moment is to try and turn that into a relatable book and essays and theories and things. But Chetan is taking these chapters and these essays and he's turning them into videos and we're turning them into solutions. But we don't just want to peddle them out like everybody else has been doing, building channels and building brands. That's meaningless and I don't understand it now, especially. So what I do understand is platforms. People can collaborate on a platform like Spotify, or like the community that gets behind the platform can start deciding what features and function they want the platform to have. And we can steer that like product owners to keep working on the platform and improving the platform. And the platform is more virtual than it is physical. It's about getting community, getting users that care about the things that we're making and building, the ideas that we're sharing, and then putting them into practice and talking about that and sharing about that and connecting together at certain times of the month or certain times of the year, doing the kind of courses and webinars that you, the audience, the community care about, so that we're not just talking into another void, creating another pile of digital noise, that this is a living thing that's coming into your life and you're helping us shape how this is going to work and how it's going to go. And there's a few pieces to the platform. The podcast or the YouTube videos is one part, but there'll be courses or webinars. There'll be another part. And one of those parts is actually a series of GPTs that we are coding and loading with this kind of wisdom and information so that anybody 24/7, 365 days a year can go to those GPTs and put your questions to it and say, can you tell me the answer to this on my level? And it's not the answer, it's a answer. And if that doesn't improve your life, nothing will. Now, I've got my daughter tearing in here, so I have to wrap up, I'm afraid, Chetan. Sorry.
You've done enough already, Rocco, and we can define enough here, man. It's been enough. I promise you, it's been enough. I'm gonna wrap this up with somewhat of an outro. Thank you so much, Rocco. Thanks a lot, man.
Man,
Cheers.
It's my absolute greatest pleasure. I love working with you, man. Okay.
Yeah. Cheers.
Take care.
Bye. Well, hold on just a minute longer. I honestly don't think that this video really needs an explicit outro, because if you're with me here, I believe that either the entire message or at least a huge part of the message must have already landed with you. So what I'm going to do is just reiterate the invitation that Rocco talked about at the very end of our conversation. Rocco and I are working together to build a platform. We're calling it A Better Way. And the entire idea is to help us direct us humans together towards a convergent, better future, away from all the different divergent paths that we seem to be on at the moment, away from the divergent paths which are not just divergent away from each other, but divergent away from life itself, life with a capital L. Now, how can you be a part of that community? All the relevant links will be available in the pinned comment of this video, and we'll make sure to keep it always updated. Why we have done it in this manner is because we wanted something more agile when compared to the outro section of a video, because we know that the various manifestations of a better way will keep emerging as the weeks, months, and years go by. And therefore, we ensure that the links in the pinned comment of this video will always stay updated. And this is where you can always find where a better way community is hanging out at the moment. So make sure you subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, of course. We're not looking to just build a channel, we're looking to build a community. Make sure you check out the pinned comment and check out wherever the community is. Check out how you can contribute actively to the community and become an active member of the community. And that's it. We're not looking to build another brand, another YouTube channel, another social media following. We're looking for building a better way. So let's build a better way together. That's it, you good people of the internet. I'll see you in the playground soon again. Until next time, peace out.